Joining us from Washington is Mr. Justin Thomas Russell, the Executive Director of Global Foreign Policy of Washington. Welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me, Selma.
Thank you. Considering Trump's description of Xi as being extremely hard to make a deal with, do you think direct contact between the two leaders is a good idea? And if not, what alternative negotiation policy would you recommend could help bridging the growing mistrust between the two countries?
Well, I would tell everybody to take a deep breath, take a cold shower, relax, and come to the table in a couple of weeks. I do not think right now, with the tensions being sparked by both Trump and Xi, by both the administrations in Washington and Beijing, are being conducive to finding a solution to the situation. What recommendation needs to be is they need to take a timeout, come back to the table with some good faith diplomatic resolutions, and start from there. What we're seeing is not only are we seeing Washington and Beijing and even Trump and Xi talk past each other, we're seeing no coordination, particularly here in the U.S. The administration is in disarray. We're not seeing Treasury and Commerce and State and the White House talking to each other, and that's causing a messaging problem, which is exacerbating the problem. Everybody needs to hit a reset button right now.
Well, Mr. Russell, in what ways might you think mutual accusations of non-compliance with the Geneva tariff agreement reflect in the sense of deeper structural conflicts between the two countries?
Well, I mean, anybody can say that anybody violated a trade agreement. The second we're off by one dime, Washington can say that Xi in China is violating the Geneva terms. And at the same time, if Xi doesn't release 1 ounce of rare earth materials, then the U.S. starts complaining. This is becoming a matter of he said, she said trade wars, and that never helps anybody. What we're going to see, and by the way, when you involve the defense secretary, as we see Pete Hegseth yesterday talking about China as an imminent threat in Indo-Pacific region, that definitely does not help. And somebody needs to get to Pete Hegseth and rein him in, because all he's doing is adding fuel to the fire.
Well, with ongoing disputes over issues such as China's critical mineral exports and U.S. restrictions on Chinese students, how can both countries, do you think, balance national interests while maintaining a stable bilateral relationship?
Well, they have to realize that we're mutually dependent on each other. This goes back to a theory that the Global Foreign Policy Center has been promoting, and that is the idea of mutually assured economic destruction. It's like the old Russian-U.S. Mutually assured destruction. One fires a nuclear weapon at the other, nuclear war breaks out, nuclear winter, it affects the entire planet. We are in a similar situation where we're getting into a trade war, which escalates. And if the U.S. economy gets hampered because we're not getting cheap goods from the Far East, that then becomes a problem for our economy because we can't make it and we can't get just-in-time logistics to meet the demand. At the same time, China gets into a problem because we're not buying it. We're not sending money over to China. That directly hits their economy. The ripple effect affects Japan, South Korea, Singapore. It affects the EU, London, Canary Wharf, Paris, the DAX, and Germany. All of this has intertwined implications. So what needs to happen is we need to sit down, take a deep breath, hit a reset button, and start over again without putting more exasperation on it.
Well, as the White House press secretary confirmed and announced a potential phone call between Trump and Xi this week, what do you think, Mr. Russell, would the outcomes be, do you anticipate from that conversation, from that phone call?
That's a really good question, Sal. And the reality is the only two people who know the outcome of that is going to be Donald Trump and Xi Jinping. The one thing you got to realize is the different dynamics that are involved here with the two personalities. Look, this is not President Xi's first rodeo. We can go all the way back to the 1999-2000 financial crisis here in the United States and the relationship between then Treasury Secretary Hank Paulson and then Finance Minister Xi Jinping. He's a very cool, calm, collected, as we've seen recently in his recent interactions with the international community regarding this trade war. She's a very cool and calculated individual. Trump is more emotional. He is more apt to spark off on social media. That poses a problem. That actually kind of gives the upper hand to Xi Jinping in China. We're quickly coming into a situation where we may need them more than they need us. And that's not a good position that we want to be in as a major global economic power.
Well, what are the potential long-term economic and geopolitical consequences, do you think, if the US-China trade dispute remains unresolved or escalates further?
The economic effects are basically we see a global downturn, even worse than what we saw come out of the OECD report that was released a couple of days ago. Instead of 2.5 to 3% GDP reductions, we could see it possibly even go up into high single digit, even low double digit GDP deflation. That is the economic side. The geopolitical side is what we're seeing right now. Is we start seeing an increase in the political rhetoric, between let's say Pete Hegseth and the defense industry in Beijing, or even between Xi and Trump. All that does is heat up the problem, doesn't de-escalate, and nobody's willing to talk or come to the table and work in good faith efforts. That's a bigger problem because that has even much more long-term, or even worse, far more detrimental, such as does it escalate into military action?
Well, that was Justin Thomas Russell. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us, the Executive Director of Global Foreign Policy of Washington. Thank you, sir.